The House will be in order. The first order of business is roll call. The clerk will unlock the machines and the members will record their presence. Has every member recorded their presence? Anderson's here, 31. Collins is here. Representative Pence is here. The clerk will lock the machine and record the roll. The roll call shows 68 present, 0 nays, and 2 absent and excused. And that constitutes a quorum. The second order of business is prayer by the chaplain, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Today the prayer will be led by Pastor Tom Doherty, and the pledge will be led by House Page Weston Derland. Will the guests in the gallery please rise?
I have a quote from Henry Van Dyke, who is an author, educator, and clergyman. He also penned the words for the Christmas song, Joyful, Joyful, We Adore Thee. He says, time is too slow for those who wait, too swift for those who grieve, too short for those who rejoice, but for the ones who love, time is eternity. And then John chapter 13, verse 34, a short verse says this, Jesus speaking, a new commandment I give unto you, that ye love one another as I have loved you, that ye also love one another. Let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, thank you for another day you give us to share love with others. You have asked us to love one another, and I pray through the circumstances of life, you will help us to go the extra mile in loving each other and being concerned for each other and mankind. Teach us, O Lord, to forgive and to look beyond the faults of others as we encounter people each day. We recognize that none of us are perfect, and all of us along the way need the loving concern of others. I pray today that each of these people in this room will know they are loved and appreciated by most people because of their giving to make Idaho a great state. May this day be filled with joy. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The House will now advance to the third order of business, approval of the journal. The House is at the third order.
February 14th, 2013. Mr. Speaker, will your Committee on Judiciary Rules and Administration report that we have read and approved the House Journal of the 38th Legislative Day and recommend same be adopted as corrected. Moved by Wills, seconded by Burgoyne.
You've all heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion carries and the report is adopted. Good gentleman from District 14.
Mr. Speaker, it's personal privilege, please.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of our House. It's our intention to put the House at ease for the PAGE program, and then we'll go back through the regular order. And so with that, Mr. Speaker, I ask you to put the House at ease.
The House will be at ease for the PAGE program.
Wrangler jeans. Mr. Speaker, I second that motion. How do I vote no on this bill? Because cursive is for me.
Representative Monks. Okay, one more, just to lighten up the mood. Just kidding, you guys. Thank you, Mr. Speaker and fellow representatives, for allowing us to be here. I'll wrap this up because I know the last thing you want to do is sit through a 5-minute speech of how thankful we are. On behalf of all the pages and I, we want to say thank you for allowing us to be here. It's been a really great experience, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. It was a great learning experience, and I hope you guys the best of luck, and I hope to hear good things from you all. Have a nice day, and happy Valentine's Day.
Well, when the first crop of pages go home, that means that we're halfway done, right? Okay. We have some certificates of appreciation here. I'd like to say a couple of things first. It's always gratifying for us to see a new group of pages come in, and the growth that you make, and the friendships that you establish amongst yourselves, as well as the relationships that you develop with the members. And having house pages is one of the perks of this job, frankly. And I hope that this has been a great experience for you, as it has been for us. We said at the first that we couldn't do this job without you, and now you know what we mean. So anyway, we have some certificates here, and I'll call your names, and then if you'll come and grab them. Alba Cano, congratulations. Shannon Cooper. Congratulations, Shannon. We're also giving the House pages each a letter, as well as their picture and the traditional House page T-shirt that my kids still wear with great pride. So, Weston Derlin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Congratulations. Jaritzi Enriquez. Congratulations. Rebecca Failing, Rebecca with a C. Congratulations. Brady Gashler. Bronson Gray. Thank you. Tussie Lloyd. Do you have Representative Wood's keys?
No, sir.
I'm glad we finally found them. Travis Mapes. Thank you. Jacob Palmer. And Rebecca Rithalder. Rebecca with a K. Join with me and thank them one more time. The House be in order. The House is at the fourth order consideration of messages from the Governor and the Senate.
Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from District 10.
Point of personal privilege, please.
The gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The other good gentleman from District 10 and I would like the people in the House here to welcome some students from the Valley View Academy who are visiting with us today.
Welcome.
Fourth order.
Fourth order. Clerk may read.
From the Office of the Governor, February 12, 2013. Dear Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to advise you that I've signed today and am transmitting to the Secretary of State the following House bills to wit: House Bills 2, 3, and 4. As always, C.L. Butch Otter, Governor of Idaho. February 13, 2013. Mr. Speaker, I return here with enrolled bills 5 and 16, which have been signed by the President, Novak, Secretary of the Senate. From the Senate, February 13, 2013, Mr. Speaker, I transmit herewith Senate Bills 1025 and 1006 as amended, which have passed the Senate. Novak, Secretary of the Senate. From the Senate, February 13, 2013, Mr. Speaker, I return here with House Bills 14, 15, 22, 23, and 37, which have passed the Senate. Novak, Secretary of the Senate.
House Bill 5 and House Bill 16 will be referred to Judiciary and Rules for delivery to the Governor for his signature. Senate Bill 1025 and 1006, as amended, will be filed for first reading, and House Bill 14, 15, 22, 23, and 37 will be referred to Judiciary, Rules, and Administration for enrolling. The House will now advance to the fifth order of business, report of standing committees. The House is at the fifth order.
February 14, 2013. Mr. Speaker, we, your Committee on Judiciary, Rules, and Administration, report that we have printed House Concurrent Resolutions 7, 8, and 9, and House Bills 162 through 179. Wills, Chairman.
House Concurrent Resolution 7, House Concurrent Resolution 8, House Bills 167, 168, 169, 170, and 171 will be referred to Transportation. House Concurrent Resolution number 9 will be referred to Environment, Energy and Technology. House Bill 162 will be referred to Business. House Bill 163, 164, 165, and House Bill 177 will be referred to the Education Committee. House Bill 166 and 174 will be filed for second reading. House Bills 172 and House Bill 173 will be referred to the Ways and Means Committee. House Bill 175 will be referred to the Agriculture Affairs Committee. House Bill 176 will be referred to the State Affairs Committee. House Bills 178 and 179 will be referred to the Health and Welfare Committee.
And I'm ready.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. February 13th, 2013, Mr. Speaker, will your Committee on Business report that we have had under consideration House Bill 127 and recommend that it do pass.
House Bill 127 will be filed for second reading.
February 13th, 2013, Mr. Speaker, will your Committee on Resources and Conservation report that we have had under consideration House Bills 47 and 50 and recommend that they do pass. Denny, Chairman.
House Bills 47 and House Bill 50 will be filed for the second reading.
February 14th, 2013, Mr. Speaker, will your Committee on Education report that we have had under consideration House Bill 65 and recommend that it do pass. DeMordaunt, Chairman.
House Bill 65 will be filed for second reading. Without objection, the House will now advance to the eighth order of business, first reading and reference of bills and joint resolutions. The House is at the eighth order.
In the House of Representatives, House Bill number 180 by Appropriations Committee, an act appropriating additional monies to the Department of Health and Welfare for the Division of Welfare for fiscal year 2013, providing legislative intent and declaring an emergency. House Bill number 181 by State Affairs Committee, an act relating to the Capitol Building and Grounds, amending Section 67, 1610 Idaho Code to provide reference to the Capital Maintenance Reserve Fund and to establish provisions relating to certain administrative costs, amending Chapter 16, Title 67 Idaho Code by the addition of a new Section 1610A to establish Capital Maintenance Reserve Fund to provide that the fund shall receive certain distributions and the fund shall be managed by the Endowment Fund Investment Board, to provide for use of monies in the fund, to provide for appropriation, and to provide for an exception, amending Section 67, 1611 to establish the Capital Commission Operating Fund to provide that the fund shall be managed by the State Treasurer and shall consist of certain transfers, interest, and proceeds, to provide that the monies in the fund shall be subject to appropriation and to provide for use of monies in the fund, amending Section 49, 420A to provide that a certain license plate fee shall be deposited by the State Treasurer into the Capital Maintenance Reserve Fund. House Bill number 182 by State Affairs Committee, an act relating to horse racing, amending Section 542502 Idaho Code to define a term, amending Section 542505 to revise a code reference, amending Chapter 25, Title 54 by the addition of a new Section 542512A to provide for wagering on historical horse races, to provide for the distribution and payment of all sums deposited in any historical horse race pool, to provide for the continuous appropriation of certain monies, to provide for certain agreements with horsemen's groups, to provide for the Historical Horse Race Purse Monies Fund, and to provide for rulemaking. House Bill number 183 by State Affairs Committee, an act relating to municipal corporations, amending Section 5308 Idaho Code to remove language granting cities the power to regulate, prevent, and punish for the carrying of concealed weapons.
House Bills 180, 181, 182, and 183 will be referred to the Judiciary Rules and Administration Committee for printing.
In the Senate, Senate Bill number 125 by State Affairs Committee, an act relating to the County Option Kitchen and Table Wine Act, amending Section 231327 Idaho Code to revise the size of a container of wine distributor or importer is allowed to purchase, receive, or sell. Senate Bill number 1006 by Transportation Committee, an act relating to the Idaho Transportation Board, amending Section 4310 Idaho Code to provide that abandonment shall proceed pursuant to law and to remove language relating to certain powers and duties of the board as they relate to the board decision to abandon, relocate, or replace certain highways.
Senate Bill 1025 will be referred to the State Affairs Committee. Senate Bill 1006, as amended, will be referred to the Transportation Committee. Without objection, the House will now advance to the 11th order of business, third reading of bills and joint resolutions. The House is at the 11th order. The House will have under consideration House Bill 88.
Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from District 14.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that we cease the reading of House Bill 88.
You've all heard the unanimous consent request. Is there an objection? Hearing none, the good gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the House. House Bill 88 comes to us from the good gentleman on the second floor. And maybe a little history before we talk about the bill a little bit. A couple of years ago, we passed a bill that was called the Hire One Act. And in that act and in that bill, we provided tax incentives or tax credit for companies that created new jobs. And that tax credit varied from 2, 4, or 6%. And that's the law today. And in that law, it had a bunch of qualifications. It said that, for example, the rate you got, whether it was 2, 4, or 6, was based upon the unemployment insurance rating that the employer had. Confusing, hard to find. It was based upon the unemployment rate in the county, and the counties were all different, and it broke it out as they went down. It also said they had to have insurance and a bunch of other things. But what we have found out is as companies have tried to come to Idaho, or existing companies in Idaho have tried to use this credit, it's confusing. It's hard to maneuver. It's hard to understand. And so what we're trying to do with House Bill 88 is clear that up. We're trying to make it simpler, more accessible, and allow more people to use it. So let me tell you what House Bill 88 does. One, it makes it simple. It's a 4% tax credit based on the gross salary of the employee. The employee has to be a new employee. That can be in a company that's already in Idaho or a company that comes to Idaho. They have to have had to work for 9 months. It depends on the county they're in on what the employee has to make. For example, if they're in a county that has an unemployment rate of greater than 8% or greater, they have to have a $12 an hour job. Trying to incentivize getting those jobs in those rural counties that sometimes have a tougher time to get those jobs. If they're in a county with an unemployment rate of lower than 8%, that job has to be a $15 an hour job. It does do away, like I mentioned earlier, with one thing that's in the current law, and that's the health insurance requirement. But remember, we have the national health care kicking in with the PPCA or whatever Obamacare is called. Sorry, John, I can't remember. But that will take care of itself, so everybody will be assured. The credit is also not transferable, and that's important. We do not want companies moving those around. They have to keep it within themselves, but we do allow them to carry it forward 5 years. It also has a sunset of 5 years, and I think that's important. We'll have a chance to come back and look at it to see if it's working. Now, as I've talked to some of the members, one of the biggest concerns is the cost of the bill. Under the old bill, the one that's currently law today, the fiscal impact on that bill when we passed it, and which takes effect, and the first time we'll know what it costs will be April, by the way, the cost on that bill and the fiscal impact was $7.9 million. Is it going to cost $7.9 million? We don't know. It's the law today. We'll know in April. But hopefully we're not here in April. I don't want to be here in April. I don't think you do. So we won't know what it cost until then. The new bill, if you look at it, has a fiscal impact of $10.4 million. Is it going to cost $10.4 million? I don't know. How many jobs are going to be created by this bill? I don't know. We're all guessing when we look at the fiscal impact on this bill. But I would remind you that a new job is a benefit to the state of Idaho. A new job means they're paying taxes. Some of the examples you've seen deal only with the income tax side of things, but those new employees will be paying sales tax and property tax and buying homes and registering cars and buying fuel. There's a lot more to it as that money rolls through the economy, so it's a good thing. The difference between the two bills' fiscal impact is $2.5 million. But again, I can't tell you that that's what it's going to be. I don't know how many new jobs are going to be created. I don't know what the cost of the current bill is going to be. I don't know. It's a good bill, though. It makes it simpler. It makes it easier for Idaho businesses to create jobs. It makes it easier to get businesses to come to Idaho. In our hearing, we heard from the Director of Commerce as he told us that one of the top 3 things that a business looking to relocate in Idaho is asked, one of the top 3 questions they ask is, what is your new jobs tax credit? What do you provide to get us here? Now remember, this bill pertains not just to those new companies coming in, though, but existing companies in Idaho that create a new job. It's a tax cut. It's an incentive. It's a good bill, and I hope that you can support it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there further debate? Good lady from District 5.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman from 14 yield to a question?
Will the gentleman yield?
The gentleman yield.
The gentleman yields.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Gentlemen, I'm curious about the accountability built into this. I think line 30 on the second page talks about perhaps the numbers going down in subsequent years, but if someone hires a new employee or a veteran, are there any provisions in case that person isn't kept on the payroll very long, even less than a year?
Gentleman from 14.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and members and good lady from
5.
5. That's one of the reasons the bill is so long. Most of the stuff that's in this bill is to make sure that we're not paying a company that changes their name, that we're not allowing a company to move an employee from one entity to another, that we're protecting the process, and we're making sure that that employee has worked 9 months. We're making sure they're not playing games. So that's one of the concerns they wanted to address in this. We want to make sure that these guys, these employees, are new net employees to the state of Idaho, not somebody that's changed the name of a business, that's changed the name of a company, or moved things around.
So further debate.
Could I follow up, please?
Will the gentleman yield further?
Gentleman yields.
The gentleman yield.
Thank you. And gentlemen, just to be clear then, not talking about trading or any of those sleight of hand things you mentioned, but just suppose that somebody is hired on and is only retained for a short period of time. You mentioned 9 months. Is there a requirement somehow that they're accountable to keep them at least that long then?
Gentleman from 14.
Mr. Speaker and good lady, that is correct. In fact, if you look on page 2 of the bill on line 45, they must be hired for a minimum of 9 consecutive months. The bill also talks about that for that month to count as a month, they have to be hired before the 15th of the month. So we've gone through that process with this bill to try to make sure that these are full-time, long-going, long-lasting jobs and that they're not in and out. It's also one of the reasons why we don't know the fiscal impact of the old bill. Because of that 9-month requirement in the old bill, we won't know till April because it pushes them out a ways.
So further debate. The gentleman from District 30.
District 30. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Appreciate that. Mr. Speaker and ladies and gentlemen of the House, the governor has led us, as the good gentleman 14 has mentioned to us, he's led us in job creation, creating this bill originally 2 years ago. And now he wants to help us to address this as the current needs that we have in our economy. I'd like to just reiterate that the minimum qualifying salary of $12 an hour in counties with unemployment rates of 8% or more, that goes to where we need jobs in the state of Idaho. I'd like to reiterate minimum qualifying salary of $15 an hour in counties with unemployment rates of 8% or less. This is all about going into those counties and creating jobs and creating economic development. One of the points that I'm not sure that I did hear was that this creates an additional $1,000 tax credit for each qualifying new employee who is also a veteran. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, I believe that we as a state are constantly competing with other states in our region and across the nation and across the world. We need to have these tools to be able to compete, and therefore I asked you for your green light to pass this job creation bill for all of the Idahoans that are our neighbors and our friends. Thank you.
So further debate. The gentleman from District 15.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, to debate against the bill.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I like to call this the third time's a charm bill. When this bill was originally enacted, we heard the same thing about creating jobs, but nobody used it. So then we came back a couple years later and made some tweaks to it, and the same argument, and nobody used it. And the problem was it was too complicated, and so we made it simpler. Now we're here a third time on Valentine's Day, but I don't think this is a real Valentine for the taxpayers of Idaho. What is a tax credit? A tax credit is money that we pay out of the general fund. It's not a deduction, it's direct cash transfer. So as we do that, we always pick, as you hear, winners and losers. Well, who are the folks that are going to be the winners here? More likely than not, they're the ones that are going to be hiring anyway. Why do you hire an employee? Because your basic fundamentals say we need to hire an employee, not because you have a tax credit. And so what we're doing is we're handing out taxpayer money to folks who are probably going to hire somebody anyway. Secondly, I'm concerned about the fiscal note, as a good gentleman from 14 mentioned, up to $10 million or more. And we don't know. Wow. I mean, Where have we heard that before? We don't know how much it's going to cost. We have another effort. We're trying to, if I might refer to, I guess we don't have legislation yet, but another concept. We're trying to repeal the personal property tax. That's going to take a lot of money. What do businesses complain about the most? Right now, top on the list is personal property tax repeal. Well, here's $10 million that we're taking out of the pot to use to try and get that particular effort accomplished. To me, the repeal of the personal property tax is much more important than this as an incentive. What do we hear about businesses trying to come to Idaho? Well, we've heard that some come here and then they get surprised about the personal property tax, say, well, I would have rethought it if I had known about this personal property tax. So we have to look at where we're spending our money. And I don't think this is a good place to spend our money. Yes, this is already on the books, but if we make it simpler, then people will use it, and it'll divert money away from other important issues that we need to address this year. So for those reasons, I'm going to vote no on this bill. Thank you.
Is there further debate? Good gentleman from District 34.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think maybe we might be looking at this as the wrong way, that this is a bill that's going to cost the state money. I think we've got to look at it from a business sense, that if you can spend a little money to create business, it will profit the state. As was said in the introduction of this bill, if you bring new employees into the state, new businesses into the state, those are a plus. If, as has been said here, this doesn't create any jobs, it doesn't cost us anything. It costs us zero. But if it brings new business into the state and new employees, the business is going to prosper. Hopefully it'll make some money. It's going to pay taxes over and above the deduction that it gets. Every employee is going to have to buy groceries, either buy a house or rent a house or something like that. It's going to create a need for more housing, more sales tax. All of these kind of things we have to take a look at, that where is the bottom line? I'm very concerned with a lot of bills that we have a fiscal impact. Yeah, that $10 million might be a fiscal impact, but it doesn't say in there what the profit is going to be for the investment. Too many people look at that fiscal impact and say, we can't afford that out of our fund. We can well afford it. If it brings $20 million in, take a look at it from a business angle, that if we can establish a greater employment in the state, we are going to establish a greater income into the state, and that income is going to more than offset what the cost is. In committee, I use this example. Every spring, I put some money out for seed and fertilizer and fuel to plant my crop, anticipating that the harvest is going to return me those expenses and a profit. And I think that's what we have to take a look at in these kind of legislative bills, that it's going to return us a profit and not be a drag on our revenue source. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there further debate? The lady from District 8.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Of course, I serve on the Revenue and Taxation Committee, and I did not support the bill in committee. And we've already heard, and I'm debating in opposition, in case I didn't make that clear.
Duly noted. For a change.
Okie dokie, for a change. All right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, we used to be a free enterprise system, and it is my personal belief that it is not the proper role of government to be meddling in the free enterprise system. Back in the day, people who changed locations or wanted to start a new business one of the first things they looked at in an area was the schools. What kind of schools would their employees have? The second was churches. Were there plenty of churches to accommodate all faiths? Those two things. And then, thirdly, but not last, the taxes. But they were looking for low, reasonable taxes. And where have we fallen down? We don't have low, reasonable taxes. If we did, we wouldn't have to have the picking winners and losers. The attraction would already be there. We wouldn't have to manipulate the free enterprise system. So I still think that we started something well-intentioned, thought we were doing something wonderful, and this is the third time, and maybe this would be the charm, but I don't think so. So I can't support this. If we're going to do tax breaks, let's do tax breaks for everybody. And then we'll all have tax money to spend. And that will ultimately help business. Downsize government, lower the taxes, and you help everybody, not just one entity. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further debate? The gentleman from District 12.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To debate in favor of the bill.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the gentleman from 34's comments regarding the growth of the economy, I think that's a huge part of this. But the other aspect is the cost savings to our social programs. And I don't think that's been talked about. I know that it's not constituted in the fiscal impact, but there's obviously a savings there that the state will see. And I think when you combine that with the fact that our Director of Commerce has told us that when he meets with businesses that are looking to come to Idaho, this is an issue that has come up. This is a tool that we can give him to deal with that objection. And for that reason, I'm going to support.
Thank you. Further debate. Good lady from District 33.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't look at this as us picking winners and losers. In fact, these companies are going to be paying tax anyway. This bill brings the opportunity for us to pull government back away so that these businesses have the opportunity then to have a little bit of a break. And that is why I am supporting this bill.
So further debate. Good gentleman from District 6.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would the good gentleman from 14 yield question?
Will the gentleman yield?
Gentleman yields.
Gentleman yields.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good gentleman, I have a few questions. The first is, do these tax credits carry forward? And if so, how long before they expire?
Gentleman from 14.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry, good gentleman. I thought I mentioned that in my opening. They carry forward 5 years. And this has a sunset on the bill of 5 years.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and good gentleman. Second question, if I may.
Will the gentleman yield further?
Gentleman yields.
The gentleman will yield.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and good gentleman. 4% of gross, and that is without a cap. So if I hired a surgeon or a radiologist at $250,000, the employer would get 4% of that.
Mr. Speaker,
14.
Mr. Speaker, good gentleman, that's correct. There is no cap.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker and gentlemen.
Gentleman from 16.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of the bill. I think the fiscal note is a little pessimistic and an abundance of caution or candor. I think the executive branch put forward a $10 million number. I don't think that takes account of the fact that wages paid in the state of Idaho to many workers, especially in this $12 to $15 an hour range, most of those wages are going to be spent on goods and services, and as to goods, there will be sales tax and for most of that. So I think that that's just one aspect where, you know, I don't want the $10 million in the fiscal note to disturb anyone. With respect to the issue of a multiplier in the economy, the fiscal note does not reflect that. And I think the multiplier, although I asked in committee about that and somebody told me an appropriate multiplier would be 2 times, I actually think that's a little low. And here's why I think that's a little low. I think in the state of Idaho we are in some trouble economically. And I'm not talking about where we are today, how it feels today, the pain that many of our constituents feel today who are unemployed or underemployed, or our kids who don't see a particularly bright future out there, who may be looking at a situation where mom and dad had pretty good jobs, but their economic opportunity doesn't look so good. I'm not talking about the way it feels today. I'm talking about the trend line of Idaho and its economy. And that trend line looks to me to be not particularly good. We have dropped in personal income in this state to last in the nation, and our per pupil expenditure on education, the one thing, education, that we can do more than any other to make our citizens productive and capable of making their way in the 21st century. Our per pupil expenditure, depending on how you measure it, is last or near last in the nation. Those are not good things. And I have been arguing for years in this House that we need an economic plan and we need to turn things around. Now, the issue about where we're headed and how we get there, and back to this issue of the multiplier, is this. You know, sometimes a grocery store puts out a product and they're willing to sell that product for less than the cost of the grocery store to get people to come into the store. We've got a problem creating businesses in Idaho and from our own people, and we have a problem recruiting people into Idaho. And Director Sarah of the Commerce Department's made very clear what he needs. Mr. Speaker, may I refer to other legislation?
Without objection, the gentleman may refer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have House Bill 100 coming up on today's calendar, the $3 million fund to help recruit businesses. We have this bill. You know, we're not going to get there on our own. We're not going to build another Micron tomorrow. We're going to, in the short term at least, have to aggressively recruit businesses to Idaho. I don't see that as a long-term solution, but I do see it as a very important thing to do short-term. Why? Because it takes a long time to reorient our people to doing something that we, frankly, have not done a great job of, building our own large, game-changing businesses in this state. And we're going to need the help of outside businesses being recruited to Idaho to accomplish that. And so I don't see a 2x multiplier. I think that bringing businesses from outside of Idaho into Idaho helps us do two critical things. One, it will generate additional revenue, which will help us create more revenue for the state of Idaho to put into education. Number two, I think it will create jobs in this state. I think it will help in some instances to create a critical mass of economic activity from which the people of Idaho can begin to lift themselves up by their own bootstraps. And so I don't think the multiplier is 2. I think it's an investment in our future. The other thing I would say is it comes with risk, folks. That's the nature of free enterprise. We're not going to get a free ride here. There are no guarantees. And you know what? If we have to try it 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times to get it right, we are doing nothing different than every business plan in every business in Idaho does. And that business plan says today and for the foreseeable future, our plan is X, Y, and Z. And then we go out tomorrow and we find that the market changed. And what do? We go back to our offices, we sit down, and we rewrite the business plan. And we rewrite it as many times as we have to until we get it right. And we're going to rewrite it a lot. Because the economy, the marketplace is a dynamic and ever-changing place. So 2, 3, 4 years ago, we did what we thought we should do. Now we, today, look at it, and we do what we think we should do. That's the nature of free enterprise. The criticism that we're picking winners and losers. I got to tell you, in this economy today, it feels like that the state of Idaho has been doing too much losing. We need to turn ourselves into winners. We need to get some wins. And the experts who have worked on this bill, Director Sayer, say this is the kind of thing we need to do to bring jobs to this state. And I believe him because I look at what other states are doing and the competition that they are giving us. And it may be great to say that we want a pure free enterprise system. Well, when Oklahoma and other states don't have their own pure free enterprise system because they've ginned up the score, so to speak, to recruit businesses to their states and away from us, we have a choice of saying we're going to waltz off on our own and we're going to remain ideologically pure, or we can get down in the trenches and try to compete with them. And that's what I think we ought to do. Finally, I'd like to say that I think the veterans credit part of this bill is a very good part of the bill. Why do I think it's a good part of the bill? It is simply the least that we, the people of the state of Idaho, the majority of whom have not volunteered for the armed forces of the United States, can do to help those who come home from war. They have made an enormous sacrifice for us, and I think that one just stands on its own. Thank you.
Is there further debate? Good gentleman from District 3.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, one of the benefits and purposes of this bill that seems to me to be one of the strongest has not yet been mentioned, and that's the fact that in the western states of this country, the corporate income tax of the state of Idaho is the highest. We have the highest, and I'll say that again, we have the highest corporate income tax of the western states. That is a significant deterrent to the recruitment of industry. It limits the number of people who come here and just make an inquiry, because that high corporate income tax is like a red flag, and it is a fatal flaw. This bill provides for hiring new permanent employees, provides a tax credit against the corporate income tax. It reduces the adverse effect. Currently, our corporate income tax is 7.4%. By the application of the benefit from here for hiring new employees, and I emphasize there's a carry forward of at least 5 years for a new company that relocates here. It's a significant benefit, and it will help us, all of us, locally, the Department of Commerce, the gentleman on the second floor, when we talk to prospects to move to the state of Idaho. For that reason, I hope this bill gets a strong support. Thank you very much.
Is there further debate? Good lady from District 18.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I ask a question of the gentleman from District 14?
Well, let's ask him and find out. Will the gentleman yield?
Sure, the gentleman will yield.
Gentleman yields.
Thank you for being so kind, gentlemen. St. Al's and St. Luke's and Micron hire and fire a well-paying job all the time. Can they take advantage of this, or is it just the net difference in those jobs that they can take advantage of?
Gentleman from 14.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good lady. Yeah, when they fire somebody, they've got to hire somebody. That doesn't count as a new job. It's the net over the year before, and that's what a lot of the wording is here, to make sure that we're not having somebody fire a bunch of people and hire them to get the credit. It's over and above what they had before.
Thank you.
Is there further debate? Good gentleman from District 23.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman from 14 yield to a question?
Will the gentleman yield?
Gentleman's getting hungry, but he will yield.
Gentleman yields.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Gentleman from 14. I'm going to try to approach a new area. In your debate, I believe you said this would simplify things and make it more appealable. My question is this: is the appealability in the net? Is this bill going to give them more tax credit than the old one did by the simplification?
Gentleman from 14.
Mr. Speaker, good gentleman, it depends on how they qualified. Remember, under the current law that we have today, it's one of those ratings is the unemployment insurance employers rating, and that's a convoluted mess. And it also depends on how many jobs and a lot of other factors. Under the current law today, it's either 2, 4, or 6. And so if you were one of those guys that was on the 6 end of things, it will cost you money. If you're one of those on the 4 end of things, you will gain money. So it's hard to quantify because we don't know who's the winner or the losers or who's going to come in where. So that's why it's so much easier just to say it's 4. Don't worry about all that other stuff. It's easier for the tax commission, it's easier for the boys over at Labor Department, and it's easier for the employer.
Thank you. Would the gentleman yield again, Mr. Speaker?
Will the gentleman yield further?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman yields.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Gentleman from 14. I have a flyer here from IACI. Did they present any information to you in the committee to say why it wasn't being accepted in the past and why all of a sudden this will create more activity on the bill? And did they give you any estimates of what it might create?
Gentleman from 14.
Mr. Speaker, good gentlemen, I don't have that flyer. And if they did say something in the committee about that, I'm not aware of it. But we did have the Department of Commerce Director, Jeff Serra, make a good point of how it would be beneficial to the state of Idaho. He did make a good point to tell us that it's one of the top 3 things that a company coming to Idaho looks at. And he did make it a good point to say that if you're a company in Idaho and want to expand, it's to your benefit to have this. We've had companies, and I'll use Micron as an example, good gentlemen, that in the past have moved to other states. Micron has a big facility in Virginia that could have been here in Idaho, and it's not because of our tax policy. The things that we do here makes a difference on where these companies go and what they do. The good gentleman from District 3 brought that up, and he makes a good point. The good gentleman from District 5 talked about the fact it wasn't capped. I would remind the good gentleman from District 5 that the upper ratepayer in the state of Idaho is paying 7.4%. You're one of the highest. This is just an incentive to help get those guys to come to Idaho, pay taxes, and grow our economy. And we need to look at other things when we're looking at our tax policy, including those rates. But that's not what we're doing today. Today we're talking about this bill, and those who talk about this bill assure us that this is good for Idaho and will create jobs and help keep them here.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, to debate the bill.
The gentleman has the floor.
Thank you. At first blush, ladies and gentlemen, I struggle with money being given out of our revenues in this type of vein, because where does it ever stop? The gentleman from, I think, 33 mentioned the business model, and I happen to agree with that. There's one other part in that bill that does help me feel a little bit better about it. I happen to live in the district where the Mountain Home Air Force Base is. And ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you this, any time we make it so that it looks like Idaho's in favor of the Mountain Home Air Force Base and is willing to help those people to be able to come back here and go to work, or even other military members, that is a plus in retaining that military base if push comes to shove, when it comes to a point where they're thinking about a reduction and they could just take away the base. For those reasons, I'm tending to waffle just a little bit on this, but I haven't made up my mind teetotally yet. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, thank you. Good gentleman from District 15, for what purpose do you rise?
To debate for the second time.
Does anyone wish to debate the bill for the first time? Good lady from District 35.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hesitate to do this, but ladies and gentlemen, we have to think about why we're doing this today. And one of the things, I guess, that gripes me so is that if the chains of government were taken off of our development of our natural resources in our state, we wouldn't have to have this bill. And if our out-of-control federal government would quit printing and spending money like crazy and spending our future for our children, we wouldn't be at the point where we are, that our buying power is eroding to the point of detriment of our families. If this were not so, we would not need this bill. Unfortunately, the real world we live in pushes us to a measure that only has one redeeming factor that I can support in it, and that is the veterans. We need to step up to the plate there. And for that reason only, I can support this bill.
Is there further debate? The gentleman from District 17.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To debate in favor of the bill.
The gentleman has the floor.
I just wanted to observe that we are not picking winners or losers. The only people that are going to be, or the only companies that are going to be winners, are those who want to win. And they want to win by creating jobs for our people. When I campaigned last year, that was the #1 issue, jobs. The people who choose to, or the companies that choose to use this tax credit will be the winners, and the ones that don't create jobs are not going to win. Thank you.
So further debate, the gentleman from District 24.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When I heard this bill in committee, members of the body, I was one of those who raised questions about the projected numbers. If you look at the information that was provided at the time, it was estimated, and this is in the statement of purpose and in the fiscal impact as well, that the total amount of outlay by the state on the first 5 years of this bill is estimated at approximately $45 million. And I asked the presenter, both from the good gentleman on the second floor as well as from the Department of Commerce, at what point would that turn positive? And they said that they really couldn't tell because the bill had a 5-year point of relooking at it, a sunset clause. But they indicated that all the information would be positive. So I asked if they could estimate the amount of money that would be generated by these various other presents. So if you have a person being hired under this bill, what would that person add to the economy in property tax, sales tax, and income tax? And the information that they provided me, I'd like to share, if I may, with permission of the Speaker.
Go ahead,
for
sir.
example, and I'll be glad to share this information with members of the body. In the area of agriculture, where the average wage is approximately $14 an hour, the annual revenue to Idaho is $2,100 per year. Okay? In logging, $4,500. In food processing, $5,300. In mining, $7,900. In semiconductors, $9,200. In health care, $4,500. So we have, by generating these other sources of income that come back to the state, these jobs do in fact create additional revenue. Now the trick is not to pay for what we don't need to pay for. Okay? There was a recent article in the Wall Street Journal, if I may refer to it. I'd encourage you to go look at that.
The gentleman may refer to it by
days.
memory. We would need to ask to read it. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The article said that basically we should look at 3 criteria, that states should look at 3 criteria when they look at this kind of incentivization program. The first criteria is, what is the payback over a 10-year period of time? Do you turn positive, and if so, to what degree? Well, we really don't know that here, but the indications are that it would be positive over that period of time. The second criteria is to not pay for jobs that would be coming already or being created already, because essentially that's a gift for something that's already going to be done. And that one we don't really know. There aren't very many restrictions on that use here, so we don't know for sure whether that would be done. And the third is to make sure that we're paying for jobs that are going to remain here to some degree and aren't going to disappear when the incentivization ends. And I think in that particular case, we're in good shape. So while there are some issues with the bill, and there are always issues with these kinds of incentive programs, it seems to me that we've done a good job of narrowing this, putting some sideboards on it, adding some real numbers to it, and I would urge your yes vote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there further debate? Gentleman from 15 is recognized to debate the bill for the second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After hearing the debate, I would just like to emphasize a few things. Number one, jobs are created through sound, fundamental business practices. If somebody's going to hire somebody, if they're going to come here to Idaho, they're going to do it because of something more than a job credit. They're going to want to be able to keep that employee on the long term. They're going to look at the long term. So again, I think that this bill, as we hand this money out, a good part of it is going to go to companies that are going to hire anyway. And who's going to pay for it? Well, what about the company that had to lay off workers because of the downturn, and now they're hiring a few? They don't get benefit for it, but they pay for this credit. We heard about our income tax. We have a high income tax. Well, and why don't we take some of this money and reduce our income tax? Every one of these tax bills, we have the same argument. We want to have people come to Idaho because we have a lower tax. Well, we have to have a focus. And to me, the focus this year is the personal property tax repeal. We are taking this money out of the general fund, and that is going to undermine our ability to pass the personal property tax repeal. We're going to have to find another $10 million somewhere to plug that hole. We need all the money we can get to make that a reality. And to me, that is going to benefit every business in the state, and it's going to be a greater incentive than this particular job credit bill. I would hope that you keep that in mind as you vote on this bill. Thank you.
Is there further debate for the second time? Good gentleman from District 30.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, I would feel that I have missed out on bringing a point to the body if I had not brought this up. A few years ago, several of you will remember that Idaho was actively pursuing the F-35 jet fighter program for them to come to the state of Idaho. We're competing with New Mexico and with Arizona. Arizona ended up receiving that project, and to the tune of a minimum of $125 million was presented to them just for construction, and therefore growing their economy and growing their state and creating jobs. I bring this up from the standpoint that why did we not get that project? Because we didn't have the tools to close the deal. This bill gives us the tools, gives the Department of Commerce, Jeff Sayre, the governor, the tools to close those deals. We are the great state of Idaho. We need to be sitting at the table with Texas, New York, California, and they need to know we're there. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask for your green light. Thank you.
Is there further debate for the second time? Good lady from District 8.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I heard a lot of, I don't know, we don't know. We've had all these bills. None of them ever came to fruition and told us exactly what we had accomplished. So I'm assuming we didn't accomplish anything. And I'm going back several years to the ethanol. We were really good to those people. I think we finally extricated ourselves from that. Of course, the federal government's still doing it, our old buddies at the top. And now I don't want ethanol in my gas. The diesel is in a separate pump. But no, ethanol's now put in the gas, and you have to know which one of two stations you can go to get gasoline without ethanol. And then there's the wind farms. We gave them their 5 years, and we opted not to go any further. So sometimes we're smart, and sometimes we're not. But the whole point is, and I think I used this once before, you got to build a better mousetrap, and if you do, the world will be the path to your door. And you don't need government to help you build a mousetrap.
Is there further debate? Would the gentleman from District 14 care to close debate?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a couple of quick comments. One, remember the difference in the fiscal impact, if you believe it, is $2.5 million based on what you have today versus the new bill. Two, you know, we're not picking winners or losers here. This is available to those who create jobs. It's a good bill. It's fair. Decisions are made based on tax policy. We all know that. This is a good bill to help influence those making those decisions to come to Idaho, and I hope you can support it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Debate is closed. The question is, shall House Bill 88 pass the House? The clerk will unlock the machine and the members will cast their vote. Has every member voted? Representative Gannon. Does any member wish to change his vote? The clerk will lock the machine and record the roll. The roll call shows 62 ayes, 7 nay, 1 absent and excused. House Bill 88 has passed the House. Is there correction to title? Hearing none, House Bill 88 will be transmitted to the Senate. The gentleman from District 14.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the remaining bills on the third reading calendar hold their place one legislative day.
You've all heard the unanimous consent request. Is there an objection? Hearing none, the remaining bills on the third reading calendar will hold their place on the third reading calendar for one legislative day. Without objection, the House will now advance to the 15th order of business, announcements. Are there announcements? The gentleman from District 22.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And just a short announcement, we will caucus today at 3:30 up in the caucus room for the majority party.
Lady from 26.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The minority caucus will be caucusing this afternoon at 3.
Further announcements. Good gentleman from District 28.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I still have tickets for the basketball tournament starting today. These are free compliments of the Idaho Activities Association, High School Activities Association. Contact me if you're interested.
Are there further announcements? The clerk may read.
Following are the Standing Committee meeting announcements for this afternoon. Agricultural Affairs Committee will meet this afternoon at 1:30, East Wing, Room 42, Andrus Chairman. Environment, Energy, and Technology Committee will meet this afternoon at 1:30, East Wing, Room 41, Rabel, Chairman. Local Government Committee will meet this afternoon at 1:30, East Wing, Room 5, Barrett, Chairman. Transportation and Defense Committee will meet this afternoon at 1 p.m. at the Jefferson Street steps for transportation to the Ada County Highway District. Palmer, Chairman. For tomorrow morning, Friday, February 15th, Education Committee will not meet. DeMordaunt, Chairman. Health and Welfare Committee will not meet tomorrow morning. Wood, Chairman. Revenue and Taxation Committee will meet tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. East Wing, Room 42, Collins, Chairman. State Affairs Committee will not meet tomorrow morning. And for Friday afternoon, Business Committee will not meet. Henderson, Chairman. Commerce and Human Resources Committee will not meet. Judiciary Rules and Administration Committee will not meet on Friday afternoon. And Resources and Conservation Committee will not meet Friday afternoon. Denny, Chairman.
The House will now advance to the 16th order of business, adjournment. The House is at the 16th order. Good gentleman from District 14.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House do now adjourn until the hour of 11 a.m. Friday, February 15th, 2013.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
The motion has been duly seconded. You've all heard it. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion carries, and the House stands adjourned until the hour of 11 a.m. Friday, February 15th, 2013. That was catching me. I was wondering.
Funding is provided by the Idaho State Broadcasters Association, with additional support from the Union Pacific Foundation, the Idaho